How do you apply for the exam? First, you go on the website for your state board and you apply for the exam. You also need to ask your schools to send the transcripts in. I always tell people, make sure you send them in from all of your schools. Let's say I went to a junior college and transferred to a four-year school. The units may have transferred, but the name of the classes didn't. So let's say I took a business or accounting class, because some states have requirements where it's accounting and business. Some states don't have the business requirements. So if you needed 24 semester units of accounting and 24 semester units of business, even though the units transferred, the name of the class may not have. So I say, to be safe, request your transcripts be sent in. You can also request a copy sent to you. So when you get it in the mail, you know the state board got it. So you go online and apply, have your transcripts sent in. The application fee depends on the state, is anywhere from $100 to $200 in order to initially apply. Some states are even more than $200. And then a repeat, if you needed to reapply, is usually about $50. The first time applying usually takes about 6 weeks from start to finish. 4 to 6 weeks is what they say. A lot of students I'm finding it's about 5 to 6 weeks. The second time, if you reapply, that usually takes about a week because they already have your transcripts. They already have all the information. Now, let's say I go ahead, I send in my transcripts, I pay my, let's say, $100, $150 to apply, and I send in the application. So I do it online. What happens is then they're going to send you back an email. I tell people, use your personal email address. Why? Because a lot of times if you work at a big firm, Roger at Deloitte.com or Roger at EY.com, it gets blocked by their firewall. So I want to make sure I get their response, and also check your junk, because a lot of times the email ends up in your junk. So check the junk. So what happens is you'll then get an email from the state board saying you qualify to sit. You get an ATT, which stands for an authorization to test. The ATT is good for 90 days, and that's in all the jurisdictions. It's good for 90 days. And what this says is you now have 90 days to decide which parts do I want to sit for in most states in the next 6 months. So which parts do I want to sit for? What that means is, let's say, for example, I'm looking at financial, at reg, at audit, at BEC, and usually in most jurisdictions, again, it's a little bit different pricing. The pricing could be anywhere from $650 for all 4 parts, all the way up to $941. For example, in some states, it might be anywhere from $160, this might be $210, and these are in between, so it could be, $750, $800. So what this usually says is it depends on the length of the exam. So for example, this might be 190, this might be 180, and so forth. So it's all dependent on the longer the exam, the more expensive. The shorter the exam, the less expensive. And this money generally is going to the testing center called Prometrics. That's how they justify or set up the pricing fee. So what happens is this total, which is anywhere from, again, $650 to $950, is basically the fee that you're paying to NASBA, National Association of State Board of Accountancies. So what you're going to do is pay that fee. Now, once you pay that fee, then you're going to get this thing called an NTS, which is a notice to schedule. And a notice to schedule is good for about 6 months. Now, there's a few states where it's good for 9 months. There's a few states where it's good for 12 months. I think in California, Louisiana, it's good for 9 months. North Dakota, South Dakota, Virginia, it's good for 12 months. But in a majority of the jurisdictions, it's good for 6 months. What that means is you sit down and say, what parts do I think I'm going to sit for in the next 6 months? Now, 6 months gives you how long? Basically 2 windows, 2 windows, 2 windows. That's the next 6 months. So you sit down and say, okay, what does my busy season look like? What does my life look like? If you're crazy busy, I'm working 90 hours a week, and I'm getting married in a month and a half, and I've got 12, well, I guess you wouldn't have 12 kids if you get married. Anyway, so what happens is you're trying to look at the schedule and say, hey, what parts am I going to pay for? You don't have to pay for all 4, and that's important to realize. So you pay the $100, $150 to the state to apply. I get my ATT, so I'm in for about $100, $150. Then your notice to schedule, you're paying for the parts you're going to sit for. Let's just say $700 roughly. But don't pay for all 4 if you're not going to sit for all 4 within 6 months. My suggestion is, let's say pay for 2 parts. Let's say $350. Then if you want to reapply, it only costs you $50, and then you pay for the additional parts. So if you don't think you're going to sit for all 4 parts in 6 months, there's no need to pay for all 4. Now, at some point, they're going to make it where you need to sit for all 4 within 6 months. They're talking about that. Hasn't passed. It's a few years off. However, at this point, only pay for the parts you plan to sit for. So then what happens is you're going to get your notice to schedule. And your notice to schedule is basically good for 6 months, which means now you schedule the parts you're going to sit for. If you don't sit for them within that 6-month period, you forfeit the fees. In other words, you can't get the money back. If you schedule a date, you can move it forth and back and forth, but you can't move it beyond that end of that window, which is 6 months. Now, as far as once you get that notice to schedule, then you can go online and you can book your exam with a testing center called Prometrics. And with Prometrics, prometric.com, what happens is they give exams 6 days a week. They're located all over the country. They're actually located all over the world. But we're only taking it here within the continental U.S., Guam, Virgin Islands, and so forth. The key is study hard, don't get discouraged. Woo, little Michael Jackson walk. Come on down. I've been teaching almost 20 years after I left Deloitte & Touche. I've done this for many, many years, helped thousands and thousands of people accomplish their goal, which is to get through the exam.